Good morning, folks. I'm Robert Wolf, and this is the Heartland Report. Today, we're looking at a busy and potentially defining week in Washington for American agriculture. Trade talks, producers' aid, the big decisions for 2025 and beyond are all on the table. So let's get into it. Uh, Trade is in the headlines this week. The U.S. Trade Representative James Greer is hosting the 3 day listening session last week, and on the U.S. Mexico Canada agreement, the USMCA, from Wednesday through Friday. And, it came ahead of the packed schedule for, the recent reviews. More than 1,500 public comments came in over the last several weeks, with over 100 ag groups urging the administration to renew the USMCA. For producers who rely heavily on the North American stability, this review carries a lot of weight. And that's what I think farmers need to understand, and a lot of the Trump supporters need to understand. Business, the economy, it works on stability. And the Trump administration works on chaos. Those are not the same thing. And if chaos becomes too much, stability becomes too low, and the game's over. We have to start again. And that's the projection we're on, to continue to have so much chaos that the stability takes the hit to the point in which we've got to redevelop a plan and start over again. Uh, you know, on the aid front, Secretary Rollins says the USDA may announce a producer support package anytime next week. Many in Congress have been pushing the Trump administration to move quickly, but lawmakers are warning that whatever comes might might not be enough to help. You got Jerry Moran out of Kansas. He says the farmers in the state are facing the toughest financial conditions he's seen in his time in public office. You know, um, I doubt these payments are sufficient, he said. We've had years of drought, years without strong farm income. Farmers just aren't financially prepared for the challenges out there today. But he neglected to mention that those challenges are being applied on him by the Trump administration. The tariffs. Yes, fertilizer is going up, but fertilizer is also going up because of tariffs. We're putting tariffs on fertilizer coming in from Canada and other areas, and we're creating a situation where the government is raising the input costs for farmers, and then he goes out and makes comments to try and lower your sales revenue, which what happens? You squish the bottom line, and that means farmers go bankrupt. And that's the reason why we're projecting more farm bankruptcies than we have in many years. The American Farm Bureau agrees. John Newton, who is one of the heads, he said a $12 billion bridge payment just is a small slice of the more than 50 billion the in economic losses farmers have seen over the last couple of years. Because yeah, there were issues under Biden. There were. I'm not pretending that there's not, but it just keeps getting worse, and the decisions being made are decisions to make it worse. And that's where people don't seem to want to understand. When you say, I'm going to offer you a helping hand, and then you pull it back and it's actually a punch in the nose, that's different than if you looked at a person right off the bat and said, oh, by the way, in 30 seconds, I'm going to punch you in the nose. At least that person has the time to prepare for it. But that's just my 2 cents. Rollins says the full details are going to be released here this week. Call me skeptical. Now, next you got China remains the wild card. Soybean cargoes have finally begun moving, and it really depends upon who you listen to as to how much is being shipped. My best guess from information I've seen is they're at about 20% of the contracted amount of that 12 million metric tons of soybeans that Donald Trump and the administration said at the beginning of November would happen by the end of the year. Now, yes, Scott Besson has now pushed it back to the end of February, but still, it's only 20%. Now, some people are saying, oh, no, it's actually a lot more than that. It's closer to 50%, and that's because they're including shipping to unknown destinations and assuming that that must be China. It might be. But again, since it's unknown destinations, that means none of us know. So, you know, without the purchases in the soybean, there's a real struggle in Kansas and across rural America. You know, he says any agreement with China needs clear details and strong accountability. Something that Donald Trump doesn't write into any negotiation, because that would mean he could be held accountable, and he just doesn't like that. So you got also Chuck Grassley from Iowa echoed that point for soybean groups have made progress expanding markets elsewhere, but never going to replace China. China's too big of a market. And Grassley says he's heard from producers losing $1.50 per bushel or more, depending on the crop. Well, you got soybeans, let's say 50, even though it would be more than that. You know, $50 or 50 bushels an acre times $1.50, that's $75 an acre that they're losing. But again, most soybean bushels are actually a little higher than that, so 50 would be a rather low number. He's pushing the administration to keep expanding markets. Great, but that's not going to happen overnight. And the loss of the Chinese market happened overnight because of a decision that was made by our government. So next up, you know, new trade deals. Deputy USDA Secretary Vaden says that White House has recently finalized several new trade deals, not just with China, but across Southeast Asia. You know, that he told Real Ag Radio that those agreements could affect how USA designs the aid package. We've got to take into account the new demand, he said, and the shutdown delayed our ability to finalize the package sooner. Well, you should have already had this package done before the shutdown. We knew in the summer that you guys, you know, that we had already damaged our relationship with China. We had damaged it previously. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't damage it completely. Maybe the proper answer is to just burn the mother up, okay? I'm not saying that it's not. But you got to think about it before you do it. Because if you stop selling something before your inventory's gone, you end up holding it, and then you take it all as a loss. And that's what farmers are doing. They're going to end up, because even if China buys more soybeans, the next year's 25 million soybeans, that's not going to be, they're already full. So when Brazil comes through, they're going to buy more Brazilian beans. And what's going to eventually happen, whether it's here this year or in 26 or in 27, China's going to stop buying soybeans. And if you're continuing to produce the amount of soybeans we're producing, we're going to end up having a bunch that we don't sell. And that's something we need to really be honest about. Talk about and discuss, how do we move forward with a better farm bill? Okay, so here's how things stand. Trade negotiations with the key partners are heating up or cooling down. Who knows? Just depends upon who you listen to. USMCA review is coming. When? Maybe soon. Maybe later. We don't know. Aid could be announced any day. Next week, the week after. Who knows? We don't really know these things. China remains a make or break factor for the soybean farmers. Because if they don't buy enough from us, then the soybean farmers are going to end up, whether it's this year or next year, sitting on a bunch of soybeans that they have no way to sell. You know, a lot could shift this week, for better or worse. And we'll keep breaking it down as it happens. You know, I would love to give people great, warm, fuzzy feelings. But there is a reality that that's not on the board anymore. So it's now just making do with the best you can of a bad situation. One that was intentional. One that the person who said he was reaching out his hand and actually punched you in the nose. But that's just my opinion. All right. I want you all to have a great day. There are things that we can do. We can increase, biodiesel. We can increase a few things. But maybe in the long term, what we need to do is start changing the way we plant and grow soybeans. Because if China isn't going to be buying 25 million metric tons of soybeans every single year from us, then maybe we don't need to be producing 130 million metric tons of soybeans every year. So I'm Robert Wolf, and this is the Heartland Report. And thank you for watching. If you like my opinions and everything, and again, I'm a fractional CFO in the agriculture industry, so I deal with a lot of clients, whether it's some row crops or whether it's livestock operations, or my favorite is the smaller diverse family operations. So if I base my opinions on what I see from my clients, from the industry itself, and I hope you all have a good day. There is a way to work this out, but it requires us coming together. And the first thing you got to do is be honest. 2 + 2 always equals 4. And if somebody tells you it equals 4.2 or 5, then you know you can't trust them. And how many times do you got to hear that before you say, I've seen this before and I don't need to watch it again? I mean, by all accounts, Gone with the Wind was an amazing movie. But do you really need to watch it 100 times until you can repeat every single line that's being said? I don't think we need to do that. I think that's pretty much a waste of time. Once we know what's going to happen, it's time to move on to something else. So, all right. Wish you all good luck. Hope it's a good week. Hope that I'm all wrong and that all the numbers come out a lot better than what I expect. But I've been doing this for too many years, and it's going to just get worse. All right. Thank you.